Welcome to our monthly ACTS Town Hall. Thanks to our member companies for helping make these town halls possible. Your support makes our mission a reality. Together in safety, stronger in collaboration. The ACTS Town Halls are an open forum to discuss concerns and present potential solutions to improve damage prevention and excavation safety. These town halls are meant to be a discussion, and you're encouraged to ask questions and share solutions. If you have a question, please type it into the chat or click the raise hand icon. Give us a few seconds, and we will permit you to unmute yourself. To unmute, click on the microphone icon in the top right corner of your screen. Please try to keep your comments brief to allow others time to interact. A recording of this town hall will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent via email after the town hall has concluded. Before the end of the town hall, each of our panelists will highlight a moving forward step to ensure we stay focused on practical and impactful solutions. We are pleased to have a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So to get us started, our moderator will begin with brief introductions.
Putting fiber in the ground, we're the ones there to do it.
Thanks, Roy. Miss Paula. There you go.
With Alpha Contracting, we worked tri-state, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi, and primarily work in Mississippi for C-Spire, AT&T, Mississippi Power, and some others around, and we're an underground construction company as well.
Thank you. And James Keith.
Thank you.
I'm James Keith with T.L. Wallace. We do all kind of underground water, sewer. I mostly do the gas construction work, and most of our work's in Mississippi and Louisiana.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. If you guys, if the panel will keep your mics open, we're going to ask all the other attendees to be muted so that there is no distraction. One of the first questions that I have, because as this group knows, as this group of excavator knows, I also function as the executive secretary for the Mississippi Underground Enforcement Board. And one of the things that often surprises me, even though the excavators that I talk to across the state, or across multiple states actually, that have enforcement, oftentimes I ask them the question, well, you tell me that things aren't located, or that there's some things that are wrong, or somebody else is violating state law. And I ask them, have you ever filed a complaint? And oftentimes the answer is no. I wonder why the answer is no. If it's a fair question, Paul, I'll start with you. And I'd like to ask each of the four of you this same question to be thinking about. So why is it, Paula, I'm sure that you've experienced some of these challenges, why wouldn't you just file a complaint?
Well, in our case, we have done AVRs, okay? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we have not been able to get in a specific answer, sort of saying, you know what I'm saying? It has been followed up, but not to where it gets resolved. So my reason for not continuing into filing AVRs is just that if I can't get the help that I'm looking for, then I just find it a waste of time, on people receiving this information and processing and trying to get somewhere, but also in our side, because we have to take pictures and, build this report and everything else. So that's why.
Too much effort and help's not fast enough.
Right.
Is that a fair summary? That's cool. That's fair. Appreciate it. Roy?
We've usually only filed them when there's an issue of protecting ourselves. If we've been accused of damaging something, usually something very expensive, we've got to have documentation. We In the past, we haven't been as good at it, I'll be honest, but we're working hard on getting that pushed forward. So we've actually implemented something fairly recently within the past year where we have an 811 complaint added to one of our pull down menus when we have a damage. And we've even got a new form where it's an 811 complaint without damage. So if we find a utility, gas, water, whatever, that wasn't located, we can actually file that complaint even though nothing has been damaged. So it's an effort to make sure that we turn back some of the efforts that other locating companies have put on us. We've always gotten a bad rap in the past. We're kind of just turning it back, using it as a shield for us going forward.
Okay. Hey, James, what do you think?
I have never filled out an AVR. And the reason being, I mean, I'm kind of like Paula. To me, I feel like it'd just be a waste of time. I mean, because I've already been on the phone, I've been calling people, trying to get the problem resolved, and who's going to hold them accountable? What's going to be the consequences of the action? It just seems like a waste of time to me in most cases.
Okay. Trey.
We've never done that, and part of that is because it's the communication that really works. So if something's not located, we, call a second request, but we have never filed a complaint. And some of that's because we got to work with these people. Now, if we were new to a market and ex utility owner started calling complaints on us and we feel like we're in the right, then I'm probably going to start filing complaints on them. But especially if we feel like we're in the right. But I never have. I've had superintendents that want to. I mean, they're chomping at the bit. If a gas locate is off, mismarked, we cut it. We're shut down. It's not our fault. I've got some superintendents that just are foaming at the mouth to file complaints against these companies for lost time and everything else. But we don't do it just from the relationship standpoint. I feel like all that's going to do is tick somebody off. And especially if I'm in a new market, that, most of the markets we work in, we have a presence and we know everybody. But in new markets that utility company doesn't know who you are, it's kind of like a flag going, pick me, pick me. You're going, look, I don't want to have to do this. I just want it to be located, what I asked for. And I don't want to have to file a complaint to get that done. And generally that's the kind of attitude and the, brotherhood, I guess, in the industry that, I don't want to have to do that. I'm not saying I wouldn't, because if you paint me in a corner and I can't even get anything done, then yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to utilize it, but I don't want to have to do that.
Fair enough. So, in Mississippi over the last 3.5 years, as a result of complaints that have been filed, whether they were damages or violations, civil penalties in the amount of almost $500,000 have been levied against stakeholders. So while it doesn't give you immediate relief, it's designed to change behavior. And we've seen behavior change with some organizations as a result of those complaints and the enforcement board's response to those violations. So perhaps it's an issue that we all need to revisit as to the value and what you're trying to accomplish when you do that. It's probably not get immediate relief, but it's probably try to change behavior, because if that behavior doesn't change next year, the behavior is going to be just the same. And you're going to have to deal with that over and over. So my question is now, thanks for your responses. My question is now, some states have 2 working days or 48 hours, whatever, for the utility to be located. In some states, in an effort to try to, help both sides out, have implemented 3 working days, 72 hours. something in between, like the midnight rule. So my question to you as an excavator, can you tell that extending the locate by time has made a difference in that you now are getting a higher percentage of your locates made on time? So in other words, has the 3 working days accomplished its intended goal? Paula, would you answer that first, please?
No, not at all. And that is the reason why I have always stated that if you want me to call my tickets 2 weeks in advance, I will. And I'll wait around 2 weeks.
Mm.
But when I get there, I want marks on the ground.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all we're
Mm.
asking. We are not actually against giving them the allowance that they need. They can get as many days as they need. The only thing that does not work is for the law to be written in a certain way and we do not get compliance. That's all.
Okay. You're sure about that, right? I'm just teasing. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. James, your response to that question, has 3 working days made a difference?
I can't tell the difference from when it was 2 days and 3 days. And I'm kind of like, Paula, I wish I could have went first. See, she steals everything I want to say, but that's how it is normally. But anyway, I totally agree. It don't matter if it's 2 days, a week. I mean, we're going to communicate. We know the work's coming, and we can give a locator as many days as they need. But when we get there, it needs to be located and boots on the ground, make the world go round. We need to be ready to roll when our crews show up there. I mean, if it's not, it's costing us money. If we get there and have to call in a non-response or this ain't marked, I'm paying people to sit there, and that starts adding up real quick.
I
Good
think it.
response,
I think
Roy.
it. I think it gets back to a lot of what Trey just said about communication. When I was calling in tickets regularly, I had numbers for everybody, so that if we had a small hiccup, we were able to get somebody on the phone really quickly. But what Kentucky's done in the past year, I really like. They took out some of the ambiguity of it. They took out that first day. So if I were to call a ticket in today, it doesn't actually go into effect. That 24 hours doesn't start until midnight tonight. So there's no ambiguity of, hey, it's starting at 11:45 a.m. local time. You've got 2 days past that. No, it's everybody's ticket goes in at the exact same time, theoretically. And then everybody knows exactly when that ticket is supposed to be due. So we don't have to worry about, hey, did I call it in time to get it for 8 a.m. on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. We have that taken out. Has it made a big difference in whether or not the locates are done within 48 hours of that time period? Not really. Some of the locators are still backlogged no matter what happens. They hire more people, they're still backlogged. We still have to have those phone numbers. We still have to be able to call somebody. And when you've got good relationships, that doesn't make a difference. They'll get somebody out there for you that morning if you get that good relationship.
Trey?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in any of the states we work in that matters if it's 2 days or 5 days. This is the excavation roundtable. So there's plenty of times that the locators get to beat up on us. Locators to me are the students that study the night before the test. I don't care how much time you give them, they're going to do it right before test time. And they're going to miss it sometimes. There's plenty of times they ace it, and there's plenty of times they fail. But if you give them 10 weeks to study, they're not going to study until the time of the test. And that's my view, and that's my perception. I'm not saying all locators are like that, but in the construction industry, that's how we perceive it from my point of view.
Sure.
Is that, here's my deadline. I gotta have it done by then. I'm not gonna get out there. I don't want to get out there 2 days early because what if a front comes through and they wash my paint off? XYZ happens. They just wait right before the test to pull the trigger is what I, observe.
That's good. And that's fair. And that's that's sort of the language I hear. When I talk to folks across the state. We were in Texas this month, and I asked that question to several excavators, and that's typically what I heard. So if you're accustomed to locates being late, what do? I mean, you get out there and the marks are not on the ground. You check positive response if it's required, and it says it's marked, but it's not marked. Now what do you do, James?
You keep trying to call. I mean, if you know something there, you ain't wise to dig. It's just going to cause you more headache.
Yeah.
You keep trying to get in touch with somebody until you get somebody out there. And I will say, as far as the areas I work, like USIC and these people, we have all their phone numbers and this and that. They're normally help you. They'll send somebody right out there. My biggest trouble and located normally the cities and trying to get sewer and water mark. They want to come the day you're out there and see right where you're digging at, and like they're understaffed or they don't want to pay no overtime and nobody works after dinner time on Fridays, and it's just that's my biggest complaint with that, I think.
Okay, Miss Paula, what you got?
Well, actually, for me, or for us, is a little bit different because cities are usually willing to cooperate with us, and they either will send someone to stay with us for the most part, or they will actually allow for us to get some of our people to locate and help them if they don't have enough manpower to go and give us, this locates ahead of time. But gas and USIC, I mean, we're talking relationships here. I don't think that we have any bad relationship with anybody out there, but it's just crazy. I mean, you give them time, you call them, the last time we were in the coast, I was with them for an hour and I gave them a list and we talked about it. We agreed on the fact that we were calling a group of locate tickets, and out of this group of locate tickets, I was going to get 2 specific streets to get marked and email them the day before. And not even doing that has been working in reality, So I don't know what to tell you. I just think that we are getting together, in this town halls to speak about the same things that are happening, but it's mainly not in our part, okay, where I see that is failing on the locator's side. And what we need to know is what they think that we need to do in order for them to comply and do their job accurately and on time.
Well, that makes sense. Again, that's a reason why this is very pointed. So as you say, you need to know what the locator thinks. The locator, when I talk to them, tells me they need to know what you think. And so we're going to give the locator a chance to do that here in 2 months, actually. And then I want to use this because we're recording it. And I want to use this and I want to use that one to see if we can't create some meaningful dialogue to resolve some of these issues. I don't think it typically is ever just one group's fault. I think oftentimes it's just a misunderstanding, and I selected the 4 of you because I know you, I know of you, And I know that you're not the problem, even though somebody may think you are the problem. I know that you're not the problem. I think it's just a matter of understanding and figuring out how to build this thing better. Trey, your response to this particular line of thinking.
I mean, if we go on a project and something's not located, first thing we do is make a second request. That way we're notifying the one call center and it's well documented that we've made a second or third request. And then, once we do that, we're going to start with the phone calls to the locators. But I'd say probably 10 years ago, the biggest thing that has helped us is, like I said, probably 10 years ago, we had a ton of work. And we were guilty of calling in tickets that we really didn't need. Yeah. And once we cycled through that and said, do not call in a locate ticket unless we're ready to go to work, it really helped us out because our volume of tickets came down and the locators realized, okay, they called in a ticket. That means they're ready to go to work. They don't have a bunch of 20 phantom tickets that we don't need that we've got locators working on. So in where we actively work, every day, that has really helped us out, decreasing our volume of tickets to where the locators know that, well, Grady Crawford means business if they call that in, because they're not saying, don't worry about the ticket on Apple Street. I'm working on Pear Street. If I don't need Apple Street located, I'm not going to get it located until I'm ready for it. And we have found that has helped us out tremendously, is making sure that we have some legitimacy.
Should take you less than 15 minutes.
When I call in a ticket, that's the one I need. I don't, so when you reduce to only calling in what you need has really helped us out a lot.
Thanks, Trey. Hey, let me interrupt, Roy, before you get through. All the attendees, if you would, be sure you muted, because we're picking up some distractions, and I appreciate it if you'd help us out there. Roy, your response to this line of thinking.
Well, kind of along the lines of what James was saying, we look like the problem, right? Because we're the ones that are out there that are digging. So we got our names on the side of our trucks. So when a water line gets hit or a power line gets hit, we have a response team that comes out to do the damage investigation. We got 15 guys out there and all the trucks and everything. So we're the easy ones to see. Nobody remembers which company came out to do the locating or didn't do the locating a week or 10 days ago or whatever it was. So it's very easy for us to look like the problem. And that's really one of the reasons that we started recording whether or not we had all the locate tickets properly done and whether or not we had evidence that the locates were mismarked. So whenever something like that happens, we have to start turning those in. We got into a bit of trouble with some gas hits in Kentucky. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We hit too many things. We had some bad people that were working for us, and we were getting into trouble. And we found out at that time that a lot of the locators in Kentucky were actually reporting us. So we decided, you know what? If we're going to get reported for some things that we're doing wrong, they should get reported for the things that they're doing wrong. So we did get a bit of that back and forth. And like Trey was saying, it's not necessarily a good working relationship. And we ended up having to come together and start talking things out and getting things settled and finding out that, hey, we're not trying to do this. We have actually fired the people who were, and we're trying to go forward. And what do you all need from us? So again, it all comes back to having that relationship. But yeah, like James said, we're going to look like the problem because everyone sees the names on our trucks out there when it happens, when the damage happens.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Certainly we run it all the time. So in some of our chat, I want to share something with you, kind of piggyback off of the chat that I see, and I totally agree with this particular chat. And it's about finger pointing, which has been going on for 100 years. And I say identifying the problem is not necessarily finger pointing. It could be, but not necessarily. In this particular case, I think it's healthy conversation. We're going to get healthy conversation on the other side again and try to find it. But always what I hear is communication is a key. Trey said it a while ago. Some of our attendees have certainly said it more than once, and I totally agree with it. Communication is the key. But if communication with each other is the key, how is it that communication works? It's not just talking. It often starts with, do you have the right phone numbers? Can you call the right people to get things done? So my question to you guys is excavators, and again, you work in multiple states, work on multiple utilities. When you come into an area, is one of the first things you do is try to get your supervisors, people who can answer questions for the locators. Do you try to get their phone numbers out to the utilities and locators so that you can communicate? And secondly, do you train your people to answer the dang phone? I know it rings 1,000 times. I get it.
Yeah.
But if you don't answer the phone, you might as well not have their phone number. And if you don't answer the phone, that's not communication. Do you share phone numbers? Do you train your people to answer the phone? Trey.
Yeah, when we enter a new market, that's kind of the first thing we do is set up a meeting almost of, hey, here's our job trailer. If any and all locators, most states you can put remarks. So if it's our first dig ticket we're calling in a new market, we're going to tell them, give us a call. We need to set up a meeting. We'll provide coffee and donuts, or we can meet at the Waffle House. Doesn't matter to us, but we want to get those phone numbers out first and have those relationships, again, in a new market where they don't know us, we don't know them. And we try to pull all parties together that want to communicate. And you get plenty that don't want to communicate. They just want to do what's on that piece of paper and go to the next one. And if it works, I'm okay with that. But we find it's much better that I know I can call Sally, and she's the water locator, and she's got my foreman's number, and they're all talking. So that's generally what we try to do is it's just old school communications and text messages, and emails and documenting everything. And it seems like the system, I mean, it's not broke. The system works if everybody communicates.
Mm-hmm. Roy?
Yeah, we're getting ready to start doing it. We just got a contract with AT&T for parts of Arkansas, not the entire state, just parts of it. So we're trying to put together a plan in the safety department now of, okay, who do we need to meet with? Who do we need to talk with? Who's our local people? Who are the people who are going to be helping us out when we get into this market? What are the differences between Arkansas 811 and every place else we work at? So those are the kind of things we're trying to work into our system now. We also have so many crews that travel across different states. Some of the crews in Louisville are heading to Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, that area that just got hit by Helene. Luckily, they're not nearly as bad as some of the other parts of the states that got hit, but we have to send these guys so we can get AT&T up and running again. These guys do not know the local differences between 811 laws. So we have to have them meet up with the local supervisors, so the supervisors can give them any heads up of any differences. So every supervisor at Star Construction has to know their area well, so that they can communicate any differences to any outside crews that come in to help. It happens a lot. We got natural disasters happening all over the place. We had a bad tornado in through Kentucky 2 years ago where it was all hands on deck for about a month. So we have to be able to communicate. So again, communication, it's the buzzword today, but that's what we got to work with.
James, how do you define that?
We work a lot smaller frame than sounds like Trey and Roy and Miss Paula, but all my guys have almost all the locators' phone numbers, the city guys' phone numbers, and I'm asking blessing us in the skies because we have most of the time somebody to get in touch with. So I don't have as big a problem with that as some people do. And we keep talking about the problem we might be the problem, the locator might be the problem, but it's going to take us all coming together in unity to have a solution, because the system ain't broke. It just needs tweaking in areas. And without these kind of meetings, you don't know where to tweak it at. And kind of like the first question you asked earlier, I seen a note pop up on the screen. Well, if you don't fill out a report, don't nobody know what they're doing wrong. So maybe I'm part of the problem by not filling out an AVR, and because we all need reproof in getting to where we need to be.
Thank you, James. And for those of you who are not from Mississippi, you may not know that AVR is an acronym that stands for Alleged Violation Report. Some states would just call that a complaint. Paula, tell us about your idea of communication.
Well, we don't really have that much of a problem as far as communicating or, giving our phone numbers out or getting phone numbers. But, the problem lays a little bit more on the fact that if you have your crews out there and you have called your ticket, you have called the local locator, either the manager or the locator or both, and they don't show up, you have called a no response, and you still have the same issue, then I just can't find where the solution really is to that, other than locating companies. We need to, I guess, find a way for them to be accountable when this happens, as well as finding us accountable for when we make an error, make a mistake. You know what I'm saying? Because if you are in the balance where you are making yourself responsible for what you're doing wrong, then you as well want others to be responsible as well for when they don't do their due diligent work. That's all it takes. So I don't see a big issue, but I do see an issue about finding the common ground to where locating companies and construction companies are meeting into the fact that if I'm gonna lose something, you better be losing something as well, so you don't do it the next time.
Yes. Hey, let
Hey,
me ask you a
Roger.
question. Yo,
Go ahead. You may have the question that's in chat. How do you deal with a high turnover and locate? Who's responsible for keeping that communication going? That's the question I think they're looking for there.
cool. Thanks, Randy. So, one of you guys want to take that on? How do you account for the high turnover, and how do you keep that communication going with all the high turnover in the locating industry, which we all know that turnover rate is fairly significant?
Take supervisors and managers of locating companies out to lunch. I was good friends with lots of the locator supervisors, and it really does help out. When they can't get a crew to go in, they would actually come out and do the locates for me themselves. It's a small thing, but just getting together, talk things out over a hamburger or tacos or whatever you want, it can really help out.
100% correct. I don't have anything else to say. You got it. It helps when you get to know the state managers, and when you get to a new market, you ask the locator, who's your supervisor? I want his name. I want his number, because you may not be here next week. I mean, we've all seen it. We've been in markets to where, when it gets to be wintertime, the locators from the north come to the south, and they're the best locators because they don't live here. When they come down from cold weather, we get the best locators around. And then they tell you, man, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. And you're like, come on, man, you're my guy. I can't have you leaving here in 2 weeks. And again, you buy the coffee, you buy the donuts, you buy a sandwich. And, but unfortunately you get, that happens. And you just got to work through it.
Yeah. Paul or James, y'all got an additional response to that?
I didn't know that locators was like duck and geese. I didn't know they migrated. I guess I'm too far south. They don't get this far.
When
Yes,
you're in a bind, they will. I'll put it that way.
Ms. Paula?
see, the only thing that we go back to is the same. If 8811 is good, system works, communication works, you call them, they call you back. But when you have an X amount of tickets and you have isolated what you need and you still can't get this many, then that's when the problem comes to you. And then you remember that on top of that, we have locators in our crews. So meaning we have the ability to locate ourselves as well, but then you get in trouble. So where do we stand about that as well? I don't have a problem that much with like a ceasefire that gets all crazy when you touch their utilities, but I don't have a problem with them because when you call them, they'll send someone like right away. So if that's what you want and that's the service or the backfeed that you will receive, that's okay. You know what I'm saying? But if you call them and you don't get anyone there and you have your crews standing by all over the place all the time or most of the time, that's when we get in problems and in trouble.
So let me ask you this: in the state, Mississippi has policy response is mandated. It's required. It's a violation of the dig law if you don't respond positively by the 3 working days. Is what locate by time is here. As an excavator, do you, if policy response is required in your state or the state you're working in, as an excavator, is that something that your supervisors are required to look at before they go to a job site? Paula?
Yes, we do.
James?
We do all the time.
We're supposed to, but I can't say that we always do.
Okay.
Sometimes they get on the job, the project manager calls in a ticket and the foreman's got a list of work for that week. And sometimes cities, we're waiting on permits, so jobs gets pushed around, they could go here. So there's times that they might get there and nobody's looked until we get there to see to check the ticket. But they all have laptops and this and that, so it don't take long to look. But positive response does help. I mean, it helps being able to look at that ticket and see if it's been located and who hadn't located it. It's I think it's a big help having positive response anyway.
Okay, Roy?
Yeah, we're supposed to, but like James says, every now and then you just get busy and things get things lapse. I had a habit of actually attaching any type of positive response I had to the paperwork that the crews were sent out with, so that they could actually look at it. And some of our local locators are so good, they would attach their photos, and when they sent in their positive response, we had all the pictures with it. So it was a really good way to compare to see what if anything had changed since they were out there, and then we were able to get on the job site. So yeah, James is absolutely right on this one. Most of the time, yep, but every now and then something gets lapsed.
Trey?
Yeah, I'm never going to put money on positive response, but it is, I mean, it's a great tool. It is a great tool, but to say that it's 100% accurate and it's the gospel, it does not replace sending somebody to go pre-survey that project before a crew rolls out on it. Like I said, it's good most of the time, but I still need a supervisor to go out there and make sure that it's ready to dig.
Okay. So take this question. It's a long question, but don't compromise yourself any more than you have to. So posture response says it's been located. You go out there, it's not located, or it's not located where you want it to be located. So you contact the locating company or the utility, whatever is appropriate. You get no response. You've waited 4 hours, 5 hours, you still get no response. You call one last time, you still don't get a response. What do you do? Trey?
Depends on the utility.
Yeah. Walk
I
me
mean,
through it.
if it's a, well, I mean, if it's a gas line, I gotta have that located, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just not taking any risk.
Right.
You know, if it's, like you said, now you get me where I shouldn't be saying some of this stuff. You know, if it's a telecom or a water line, and you know, we're trying to find it.
Yeah.
But if it's not located, and if there's a handhole right next to it, I can open the handhole and see fiber splices and all kinds of stuff. You know, I need to get that located. Most of our guys carry locators on their crews, but depending on the utility, people don't want you touching their stuff. So it's a slippery slope. There's no doubt. And
Does your client want you to wait? Does your client want you to wait
no,
a couple of
the
days?
client doesn't care. What client wants the product in the ground ASAP. And when you use that as an excuse, it's like you just made up the grandest fairy tale that we can't get this located. That's why we can't do this project. And you know, they don't care because they're not paying for it when you cut it. The excavator is. The client's not saying, here's 10 extra $1,000 in case you go cut this thing. You know, we got your back. The client does not have our back. All the responsibility is on an excavator. So, you know, and look, every crew is going to do it differently. And it shouldn't be that way. We should all have 4 different company policies that everybody follows, but it just doesn't work that way. There's too much going on. There's too much thought process, but we do train plenty that, you know, this is what we got to do. And before you go make that step on your own, you better make some phone calls to say, hey, we've called. They're not coming. What do you want me to do? You know, those are the kind of phone calls that should hit me, and not just go to the superintendent, and the superintendent making that call. I better be the one making that call on what we're going to do. And you better have gone through witch sticks, gone through everything, probing rods in the book before you start digging.
Yeah. I know it's not easy. It's all out in the field too. This is not an intellectual question. This is distractions. It's how hot it is. It's how cold it is. It's how aggravated you are. It's a gazillion things. But at some point we got to quit saying the excavator's a bad guy because he dug because there wasn't any paint on the ground. I'm not suggesting we dig. You just explained all the steps you go through, the caution, the frustration, the aggravation. That's all part of the communication piece. We can solve a lot of these things with better communication, but that means we're talking to one another, not at one another. Roy, excuse me for interrupting.
No, that's Trey pretty much hit the nail on the head. Now, do I think that some of our crews have dug without knowing that, or with knowing that there's something there and there wasn't any paint on the ground? Probably. I don't know that until they hit something though. But our policy is we don't dig. If we know a utility's there and we do not have paint on the ground, we do not dig. We tell our crews all the time, if you get out to a job site and you don't see any paint on the ground, it may be a godsend, but it also may be somebody else's mistake, and you're going to have a really bad day if you don't verify that. So we've got to do that. We got to make sure it's verified. But yeah, our policy is no matter what utility it is, if we don't have paint on the ground and it's supposed to be there, that we don't dig. And I have been told blatantly by my client before, go ahead and hand dig it. It's okay. I'll take responsibility. And I've had to look them in the eye and say, why don't you do this? Call your boss and have him call my boss and put that in writing, and then we'll see what we can do about it. And not a single time has anyone come back and said, go ahead and dig without locates. Not once. So it happens. But
Paula, I see you shaking your head. This is then your wheelhouse, isn't it?
I totally agree. I mean, they can say whatever they want, and we want to listen because we're working for them. They are our clients. We are answering basically to them, but in the position where you cannot make them responsible at the bottom line at the end of the event, then you should take your responsibility by just making your own decisions. And the same thing that Roy says, and it is what we do. We will try, we'll do our best. We're going to call our no responses. We're going to call our contacts. We're going to wait a little bit. And if nothing else can be done, usually what we do is we're blessed with several jobs being worked at a time. We'll shift and reroute our crews to go somewhere else, and then put the responsibility back to either the prime contractor or even the client to say, okay, well, this is what we have. This is my documentation on the facts that we have dealt with them this much. And then if you want me back, you need to do something about it as well. That's all
Okay.
I can say. Now, I would like to throw this back at fines and a final solution of, common ground of this matter. Is there any way that we could see, like after an AVR is filed, some sort of fines that will equal to the excavator's loss to whom was not complying, like if the locator was not there and you had to wait and reroute and do all that? Is there a chance to ever seen something like that happen? Because like I said, I mean, every time we touch the money side on whoever is, we're going to jump up and do our due diligent work. Nobody wants or is in the business to lose any money.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
So I can only speak for Mississippi. I presume it's true across the country where there's enforcement. The civil penalties, while they start off very low in Mississippi, once you reach the maximum fine of $2,500 and you're a locating company or utility that is in violation for not locating or not locating accurately, the fines get up to $2,500 per occurrence. And you have 10 AVRs filed against you on a monthly basis. It's $25,000 a month. And that tends to get people's attention. I know for a fact it has created some behavior change in Mississippi. I'll be glad to talk to you about that offline anytime you want to, Miss Paula. There are things going on that frankly, we've probably done a poor job, and I don't mean just Mississippi. I mean, most states, most 811 systems have done a poor job of really helping you understand the benefits of filing instead of just going into a black hole and look what all I'm having to do and what do I get out of it. You probably haven't been told that. And you need to know that. Everybody needs to know that, because the solution is not a quick fix. Having to call somebody on the phone when your crews get out there for the rest of your life is not really what you want to do. You want the paint on the ground. So the solution is a long-term fix, and you're part of that solution by utilizing the system. Let me ask you this question now. It's like 9 minutes to the end of this. You guys have been awesome. I've got a lot more questions that I didn't get to, but let me ask you this. So based on the responses you gave today, listening to one another, different states, different perspectives, different utility types, what's the key takeaway from the excavator perspective we're talking about today? I mean, what have we discussed, or what should we have discussed that from your perspective would be the most important thing for you to take away and to share with the audience who's been listening and commenting big time here off on the side? Key takeaway, we'll start with Roy. I don't think we started with Roy first today, so we'll start with you first, Roy. Key takeaway.
Key takeaways, I think, come down to two things really. Training. First thing, everyone needs to be trained. That's internal and external. Your crews have to be trained to look for certain things. Your supervisors have to be trained the proper way to call in an 811 ticket. The second thing, we've said it, I don't even know how many times now, communication. I know it sounds like, because I'm going off something Roger just said, it sounds like, we always have to call and talk to somebody. We don't. When I was a supervisor, I didn't have to call on 90% of my tickets. It was that 10%. And so we had the luxury of being able to move crews around. It wasn't that I had to have certain things on certain dates. I was able to go out and see what was actually being done, and then to make a phone call at that point. So hopefully everyone's having that good luck, but if you're not, then I can certainly understand the frustration. So like I said, training, communication, and that's internal and external. We have to be able to communicate within our own groups. Our supervisors have to be able to tell our crews what they need. Our crews have to feel comfortable enough to come back and have questions. And then we have to be externally communicative. We have to be able to talk to the supervisors and managers of locating companies, for other diggers who are out there, other excavators. If we're going into an area where multiple companies are going to be doing multiple things, we have to be able to call them up and say, hey, am I going to be treading on you guys today? Who's going to come in after you? When can we get out there? So it all comes down to me, training and communication.
Thanks, Roy. Paula, key takeaway.
It's gonna be the same thing as Roy. It's gonna be communication and then training your crews, your guys, to know who to call. And usually they know it, like I said, but once in a while you see that, that doing it will help. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate it. James?
One of my key takeaways is appreciating people like you for taking time, putting all this together. And because it's going to take unity between us, the locators, cities, the companies that we work for. We've all got to come together to make all this possible. It ain't just, it's all of our problems. It's our problem. It's the locator problem. It's the city's problem. It's the contract, the utility companies. I mean, we all got stake in the game. So, and another thing that I took away from this meeting personally is hearing, just having an opportunity to hear some of the struggles that other contractors are having and different things, because like, I believe it was Trey or either Roy, the question about the gas line, you can't dig if you know there's a gas line there, if you know that there's a power line there, because every one of us, our number one goal is life, and that our people go home at the end of the day. And me, I'm blessed because I have to locate the gas myself. So that's one I don't have to worry about. And then most of the time you can get the power people out there. And, I hate to say it, but sometimes after 4 or 5 times, or you've been out there 4 or 5 days, which it ain't ever like that, but I would say if I was out there that many days paying that many people, if it was just a water line or something, I'd probably tell them, look, let's start digging. I mean, we can fix that if we hit it because we got water and sewer crews. I mean, but you can't replace nobody else's family member or life. got to make sure your people go home. And I think unity is the biggest thing that we got to do. And I think people like you bringing us all together is what will make that happen. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Trey, you got the last word.
There's not much to add. You know, I mean, everybody's on the same page. It's communication. And hey, I grew up in this industry, and it used to be you had a Ziploc bag full of quarters to give your crews when they left, so they could call back and find a payphone and say, "Hey, this isn't located." Well, then that secretary, she's got to start calling the locators who don't have cell phones. You know, it's 40 years ago, it didn't happen. Roger, you've been in here 50 years.
Yeah.
I need to remind you of that, you know, it was just different. And this, you know, we've said it here, the system is not broke. We've got cell phones with FaceTime. Everybody's got cameras. Everybody's got pictures.
Yeah.
And you do kind of get, at least I feel like we kind of get real time service. If something is not located, you know, we're sitting here talking about, I couldn't tell you the last time we've had to make 4 or 5 requests. You know, I just don't remember that. And generally it's the one phone call or it's the one text. And the locator generally is like, "You're next on my list." Whether he's lying to me or not, I don't care. As long as I'm the next one on the list.
Yeah, right.
You know, so everybody really, I feel like, I mean, you're going to have bad excavators. There's bad ones out there, and you're going to have bad locators.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everybody's trying to sing off the same sheet of music. And sometimes it's gospel, and sometimes it's 4-letter rap, you know, that you don't want to listen to. But for the most part, everybody's trying to do the right thing. And as long as you communicate, it generally works out.
Guys, y'all have been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate your willingness to answer some difficult questions and compromise yourselves just a little bit. There is a solution. It's not in front of us today because we're too blinded by the distractions. It's a longer term process, even though Trey's been in it 40 years plus. So it's a longer process than that because for the first 30 or 40 years, we probably were part of the problem. And now it's time that we start being part of the solution, which means utilizing the whole system. 811s are across the country are getting better, more in tune with what's going on. I believe that. I also believe that the stakeholders like you and the locating companies and the municipalities are struggling to find their right place. And so they're trying permitting, which is creating some real challenges in and of themselves. So we got to continue to work together. And when we get through working together, we will be able to see the solution. We may not can see it from where we are, but if we'll keep walking down the road, we'll see it just over the hill. Thanks to everybody who joined us today. Thanks for all the chat. Pretty impressive. There is a survey you're going to have access to. Kind of rate us, help us come up with some better solutions.
Thanks to all of you, our panelists, and our moderator for sharing your expertise. Please take a moment now to fill out a brief survey that will be posted in the chat so we can continue to improve these discussions and address topics that are important to you. Be sure to register for next month's Town Hall by visiting our website. Again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month.